We live in a world where the word love is spoken 1,000 times a day, and yet it is seldom understood. We say that we love chocolate, or that we love music, and in the same breath declare that we love our families, or even God Himself. But surely these are not all the same thing. If a single word must do service for so many differing affections, perhaps the poverty lies not in love itself, but in our failure to discern its forms. For love is not a flat plain, but a great mountain with many paths and many altitudes. Some loves are born low to the ground, as natural and familiar as breathing. Others rise higher, demanding from us courage, risk, even sacrifice. And at the summit stands the love that is not ours by nature, but God's own gift to us, the love that stoops down to lift us up. I have often thought of the human heart as a kind of dwelling, with many chambers, each one designed for a particular love. It would be a mistake to suppose that one chamber cancels the others, or that we should abolish all except the highest. Rather, they are like steps upon a staircase, and if one step is missing, the climb becomes more perilous. The first of these loves is affection, the most humble and homely of them all. It is the love we first encounter in the nursery, in the quiet dependence of child upon parent, or in the warmth of a dog that rests at our feet. It is not glamorous. It is not celebrated in poetry. Yet it forms the very soil in which all the other loves take root. For affection teaches us to love what is near, what is ordinary, what is given to us not by our choice, but by sheer circumstance. We do not choose our family. We wake up one morning and discover that we are born among them. Affection says, "These are yours, whether convenient or not." And in learning to love them, we practice a humility of the heart. But affection, though it is a blessing, may also become a tyrant. The mother who cannot let her grown son go, the friend who clings possessively, the man who demands gratitude for every act of kindness. Such distortions reveal how even the gentlest love can decay when severed from its source in God. For affection was never meant to be self-contained. It points us beyond itself to a wider circle. The second love is friendship, a rarer flower, and one that often goes unnoticed in our age. For modern society values companionship, but has little room for the deep fellowship of souls. Friendship is born when one person says to another, "What? You too? I thought I was the only one." It is a love that looks outward, not inward. Two companions stand shoulder to shoulder, gazing toward a common truth or a shared vision. Unlike affection, friendship is not bound by blood or necessity. It is chosen. It is freedom, and in that freedom, a joy unlike any other. Yet friendship, too, is not without peril. The comradeship of conspirators, the clique that closes itself to outsiders, the dangerous intoxication of feeling superior to those who are not in the circle. All these are shadows that creep into friendship's bright light. If it forgets humility, friendship can turn from a school of virtue into a breeding ground of pride. Then comes Eros, the love which the poets most often sing, and which has toppled empires as easily as it has built homes. Eros is more than mere sexual appetite, though it is not less. Appetite alone says, "I want a woman." But Eros says, "I want this woman." It is the love that turns the eyes of two people so fully toward each other that the rest of the world seems to fade away. It is intoxicating, exhilarating, and yet perilous, for when Eros becomes a god, he soon becomes a devil. If he demands worship, he consumes those who bow to him. Yet when Eros bows before God, he becomes a channel of grace, transfiguring human passion into a reflection of divine creativity. And finally, at the summit, stands charity, the love which is not of man but of God. The Greeks called it agape, and the New Testament tells us that God is love. Charity is not born from our desires, nor sustained by our strength. It descends like sunlight into a darkened room, unmerited and unbidden. It enables us to love not only the lovable but the unlovely, not only our friends but our enemies. It forgives where there is no reason. It gives where there is no return, and it remains steadfast when all other loves falter. Charity does not abolish the other loves but sanctifies them. Affection becomes tender rather than possessive. Friendship becomes humble rather than proud. Eros becomes holy rather than idolatrous. All loves, if left to themselves, betray us. But all loves, if lifted into the current of charity, find their true fulfillment. It is not that God despises our natural loves. He made them, but he knows that they are safest, truest, and most radiant when they are lost in the ocean of his own eternal love. And so, we see that love is not a single note, but a symphony. And unless we allow the divine conductor to guide it, the music soon collapses into discord. Yet when each instrument plays in harmony with his will, the melody of our lives becomes something glorious, something eternal, something that no death can silence. Now, when we consider these four loves together, a curious pattern emerges. They are not four separate islands, but more like rivers that flow into one another, finally emptying into the boundless sea of God's own life. Each begins with some echo of need or delight within us, but only charity, agape, comes entirely as gift. Take affection, for instance. Its greatness is in its very earthiness. It teaches us to love the commonplace, the smell of old books, the creak of a chair, the steady presence of those who never dazzled us, but who were simply there. Such love protects us from the illusion that only the extraordinary is worthy of our devotion. Affection anchors us, but it can also entrap us if we mistake its natural warmth for the fullness of love itself. A man who will do anything for his own family, but nothing for the stranger, has allowed affection to close in upon itself like a clenched fist. Friendship, by contrast, lifts us above the merely natural. It chooses, it delights, it discovers companionship not of necessity, but of recognition. Friendships have been likened to the school of virtue, where honesty is sharpened and loyalty tested. Yet it is precisely because friendship feels so exalted, so free from mere appetite, that it may deceive us into pride. Two friends, seeing themselves as superior to the crowd, may nurture arrogance under the guise of nobility. Eros, most perilous of all, reveals the mystery that human beings can give themselves away so completely to another that their very identities seem intertwined. It is not wrong that Eros should consume. Its very nature is to burn. But if it becomes an idol, if the lovers worship their passion as though it were God, then it enslaves them. True Eros is a reflection, a signpost pointing beyond itself to the Creator who fashioned male and female, and who delights that love should be fruitful, not only in children, but in virtues of patience, kindness, and self-giving. And at last, charity. It is the river into which all the others must flow, else they stagnate and sour. Charity alone descends from above. It is not drawn from the wells of our own longing, but poured into us by the Spirit of God. It is this love that enables a man to forgive the unforgivable, to love the unlovable, to stand before the cross and see in the face of his enemies not only cruelty, but also the image of God. Charity, unlike the others, does not depend upon reciprocity. It is not diminished when unreturned. It is not extinguished by rejection, for it is the love of Christ himself, alive within us. What, then, is the destiny of these loves? I believe they are not destroyed in eternity, but fulfilled. In heaven, affection will remain, but purified of clinging possessiveness. Friendship will endure, yet without exclusion, for all will be our companions in the presence of God. Eros will be transfigured, not abolished, into a union of souls that mirrors the marriage of Christ and his church. And charity, which began here as the faint flame of grace, will blaze forth as the very atmosphere of heaven, the light in which we shall live and move and have our being. To say, then, that God is love is not mere poetry. It is the most concrete of truths. It means that all our earthly loves, beautiful, fragile, dangerous, glorious, are but tributaries that lead us to the source. And if we mistake the tributaries for the sea, we not only miss the destination, but risk losing the streams themselves. Only when they are surrendered to God do they find their eternal freshen. If you will allow me, I should like to pause upon a paradox. Each of the natural loves, affection, friendship, and eros, is good in itself, a gift of the Creator. And yet, each one contains within it the seeds of its own corruption. The very strength of a love, if left to itself, becomes its weakness. What protects them is not their own power, but their willingness to submit to charity, which alone gives them permanence. Consider affection once more. A mother's tenderness is one of the holiest things in this world, yet how often it turns inward, becoming smothering rather than nurturing. The love that once gave life can slowly choke it. Why? Because affection, when it forgets to bow before God, begins to demand absolute loyalty. It asks for what only God can rightfully claim, the undivided heart. And so, affection must learn to die to itself if it is to rise again in glory. Or friendship. It can be noble, free, exhilarating, but notice how easily it becomes exclusive, how quickly it whispers, "We few, we chosen, we superior ones." There is a subtle pride that creeps in, the delight not only in what we share, but in who we exclude. Friendship, at its best, is the joining of souls around a common truth. But if the truth itself is small or false, then the friendship becomes a conspiracy of blindness. Charity alone cleanses friendship, teaching it humility, making it porous rather than closed, generous rather than jealous. And what shall we say of Eros? No other love has been more praised in poetry, more sought in passion, or more feared in its power to consume. For Eros can exalt two mortals into a vision of heaven, or plunge them into a living hell. When lovers believe their passion to be infinite, they are deceived. For no finite creature can bear the weight of being another's God. Only when Eros kneels before the throne of charity can it endure, transformed into something sacramental. Then the longing of body and soul becomes not idolatry, but a window into divine creativity, a participation in the mystery by which life itself is begotten. At last we return to charity. Here is the love that is not of man, but of God. It is not a mood, not a natural inclination, not even the noblest of human affections. It is, in truth, God Himself living within us. We cannot manufacture it. We cannot summon it by willpower. It is given, poured out, descending like fire upon the altar of the heart. Charity is what makes it possible to forgive when forgiveness is humanly impossible, to endure betrayal without bitterness, to love one's enemy, to pray for those who persecute. It is the very love of Calvary, where Christ, nailed to the wood, prayed not for vengeance, but for mercy. Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. If the other loves are rivers, charity is the ocean. If the others are lamps, charity is the sun. And when the rivers have all run dry, and the lamps have all burned out, charity will remain. Love never ends, said St. Paul. Faith and hope will pass into sight, but love will endure, for it is the very essence of eternity. I have said that charity is the crown of all loves, and perhaps you may wonder, why then should we value the others at all, if only one endures? Would it not be wiser to cast aside affection, friendship, and Eros as mere shadows, and cling only to the divine? Yet here lies one of the greatest mysteries of God's design, that He has woven the eternal into the temporal, and the divine into the natural. The lower loves are not obstacles to the higher. They are rungs on the ladder by which we ascend. Think of a child learning to speak. At first, his words are clumsy, even broken. Yet those halting words are not discarded when he later becomes eloquent. They are fulfilled. So too with the loves. Affection, friendship, and Eros are not destroyed by charity, but transfigured. They become themselves at last when bathed in its light. It is here that many stumble, for our temptation is always to idolize the natural love itself, to ask of it what only God can give. We expect affection to give us endless comfort, and then we are shattered when it turns to suffocation. We expect friendship to make us feel exalted, and then we despair when betrayal pierces us. We expect Eros to offer eternal bliss, and then we are undone when passion wanes or becomes pain. The tragedy is not that these loves fail, but that we asked them to do what they never could. But once charity holds them, they become instruments of joy rather than despair. The mother who loves in charity will release her child with blessing rather than bind him with guilt. The friend who loves in charity will rejoice not only in his own circle, but in every soul lifted toward the light. The lover who loves in charity will see that his beloved is not his possession, but God's beloved first, and that to truly love her is to lead her nearer to God, not away from Him. And thus we discover that the four loves, rightly ordered, form not a battlefield of rival passions, but a harmony. Affection grounds us, friendship enlarges us, Eros exalts us, and charity sanctifies us. Together they shape us into creatures who are not only capable of love, but who are remade by love. For in the end, it is not we who master love, but love that masters us. We are drawn upward by it, humbled by it, wounded and healed by it. It is the great alchemy by which dust becomes spirit, and spirit becomes glory. The four loves are but the scaffolding. The true edifice is that eternal communion in which God is all in all. And when we at last stand in His presence, I do not think we shall despise the loves we knew on earth. We shall recognize them as hints and foretastes, like sketches compared with the finished painting, or faint melodies compared with the symphony. They will not be abolished, but fulfilled. Every pure affection deepened, every true friendship enlarged, every holy Eros transfigured, every act of charity caught up into the everlasting love of God. It seems to me that when we speak of love, we are not merely speaking of human experience, but of the very fabric of reality. For God Himself, as Christians confess, is not solitary, but triune. Within the life of the Trinity, there has always been love, the Father pouring Himself into the Son delighting in the Father, and the Spirit proceeding as the bond of that eternal affection. Thus, when we love, even in the smallest ways, we are tasting something of the inner life of God. That is why the four loves, though fragile and often corrupted, are of such immense importance. They are not inventions of our imaginations, but reflections of the eternal love that holds the universe together. To despise them would be to despise the image of God within us. To idolize them would be to turn the image into a rival of the reality. The secret is to allow them to become windows, not walls, openings through which God's light may shine, not obstacles that block the view. Affection, friendship, and Eros are like stained glass in a cathedral. By themselves they are dark, heavy, and opaque. But when the sunlight of charity passes through, they blaze with color, telling a story that no single pane could reveal. Remove the light, and they return to lifeless fragments. Keep the light, and they become glorious. What then does this mean for our daily lives? It means we must treat every love as a gift entrusted to us. We do not clutch it as a possession, nor do we despise it as unworthy. We receive it with gratitude, discipline it with humility, and surrender it with trust. The family that affection binds, the friends who walk with us on the road, the beloved whose face becomes the horizon of our joy, all these are good, but all these are penultimate. They are not the destination, but the signposts. To mistake the signpost for the home is to wander endlessly. To follow it in faith is to arrive at last where every road was leading, the eternal embrace of God. And here is the final wonder. In that eternal embrace, nothing good is lost. Every act of kindness offered in affection, every moment of loyalty in friendship, every holy desire in Eros, all will be gathered up, purified, and made part of the everlasting song. Love is not wasted, even when it seems to end in tears. For the God who is love wastes nothing. He takes even our broken loves and refashions them into jewels for His crown. So I say again, love is the secret signature of our souls, the key that unlocks both earth and heaven. To love at all is to be vulnerable, yes. It is to risk pain, to invite loss, to open oneself to wounds. But to refuse love is to harden the heart until it becomes stone. Better by far to love and be wounded, for then, in the cracks of our brokenness, the light of charity may enter, and we are remade. When I reflect on the four loves, I cannot escape the thought that each is a school, a training ground for the soul. God, who desires us to be remade in His likeness, uses them to teach us lessons we would never learn in isolation. From affection, we learn humility. We do not choose our family, our childhood companions, or the ordinary circumstances that surround us. they are given. And in learning to love what is given, we are trained in gratitude. To love the imperfect parent, the demanding child, the weary neighbor, this is to practice patience, forgiveness, and the acceptance that life is not of our own making. Affection whispers to us, "Be faithful in little things." From friendship, we learn honesty. The true friend will speak truth even when it stings. He will not flatter us nor abandon us when storms come. In the presence of a real friend, our pretenses fall away, and we dare to be known. And what is this but a foreshadowing of how we shall stand before God Himself, naked of masks, known completely, and yet loved? Friendship trains us to rejoice in a shared vision, to say together, "Not mine, not thine, but ours in truth." From Eros, we learn surrender. Passion asks for nothing less than the giving of the self. Yet Eros, left unchecked, becomes consumption rather than gift, a hunger that devours rather than delights. It is only when Eros bows to charity that it becomes a mirror of divine self-giving. Then, husband and wife learn what it means to lose themselves and find themselves again, not in idolatry, but in a union blessed by God. Eros, purified, whispers to us the eternal mystery, that love is stronger than death. From charity, we learn the very heart of heaven. Charity asks us to love not because the object is lovable, but because God Himself is love. It is the wellspring from which all mercy flows, the light that never darkens, the fire that does not consume. When we forgive an enemy, when we give to one who cannot repay, when we bless those who curse us, we taste what it means to share in the divine nature. Charity sings to us, "Be perfect as your Father in heaven is perfect." And here lies the grand design. God uses these loves not to amuse us for a season, but to prepare us for eternity. They are the chisels by which He carves us into the likeness of Christ. Each love in its way wounds us. Each love in its way heals us. For love, in the end, is both cross and crown. If, then, you ask me what life is for, I can only answer, it is for love. To learn to love rightly is to learn to live. To refuse love is to refuse life. And to open ourselves to the full measure of love, even when it breaks us, is to be drawn, step by step, into the very life of God. If I have said that life is for love, I must also say that death itself cannot defeat it. For love belongs not merely to time, but to eternity. The grave may silence voices, separate hands, and scatter households, yet it cannot erase the love that has passed through charity into God. What is sown in weakness will be raised in power, and every act of true love, though forgotten by the world, will be remembered in the heart of God. We must therefore learn to live in the light of this truth. All our loves are rehearsals for heaven. They are not ends in themselves, but preparations. Just as a child's practice scales are not the music, yet without them he could never play the symphony, so affection, friendship, and eros are the training grounds by which we are schooled in the eternal music of charity. Think of the saints. Their affections were often ordinary, their friendships sometimes flawed, their eros disciplined or renounced, but through it all, charity grew. And in the end, what remains of them is not their failures, not their wounds, not even their natural loves, but the light of God's love shining through them. That light has not faded. It blazes still, a testimony that love never ends. And here, perhaps, is the greatest lesson of all. To love is not merely to follow a command, it is to align oneself with reality itself. For God, who is love, has structured the universe so that only love endures. Power crumbles, knowledge fades, beauty withers, but love, once given, never dies. It is gathered into eternity, where it becomes part of the everlasting chorus of praise. So, my friends, let us not despise the lower loves, nor idolize them, but let us offer them. Let us place every affection, every friendship, every act of Eros upon the altar of God, that they may be transfigured into charity. For the day is coming when the shadows will flee, and we shall awaken to the eternal morning, to find that all our faltering loves have been caught up into the one love that holds heaven and earth together. And until that day, let us practice love, messily, imperfectly, vulnerably, but faithfully, knowing that the God who is love wastes nothing. Even our brokenness, even our failures, are threads in His greater design. This, then, is the story of the four loves. They begin in the dust of the nursery. They grow in the fellowship of companions. They burn in the passion of lovers, and they are crowned in the glory of God. Each love calls us upward, until at last we are lost, and yet found, in the ocean of charity, which is God Himself. So if this reflection has stirred you, I invite you, let these words travel further, share them, ponder them, let them awaken conversation. If you have found something of truth here, then I ask you, gently, as one friend to another, to like, comment, share, and subscribe, that together we may continue this pilgrimage of thought and faith. For love, after all, is not a solitary journey, but a fellowship that leads us home. And so we come at last to the quiet close of this long meditation on love. It seems to me that if one were to summarize the whole matter in a single sentence, it would be this: all loves are good, but none are safe until they are surrendered. Affection is tender, but it can cling too tightly. Friendship is noble, but it can become proud. Eros is intoxicating, but it can enslave. Only when the flame of charity descends upon them do they shine as they were meant to shine. For the truth is that our natural loves are but shadows of the greater reality, and shadows must give way when the sun himself rises. This does not mean that the lower loves are unworthy, or that they are to be despised. Far from it. The God who is love fashioned them for us, and He delights that we should taste them. They are training grounds, stepping stones, glimpses through the veil. To feel affection for one's family, to walk arm in arm with a faithful friend, to burn with longing for a beloved, these are not small things. They are sacraments of earth, hints of the eternal banquet. If we treat them rightly, we will discover that they are not rivals to heaven, but foretastes of it. Yet, we must not forget their frailty, for they are like lamps in the night, precious, beautiful, necessary. But if we mistake the lamp for the dawn, we remain in darkness. The loves are good precisely because they point beyond themselves. Affection teaches us humility. Friendship teaches us loyalty. Eros teaches us surrender. And charity, which is God Himself in us, teaches us eternity. To receive all of them as gifts and to return them all to the giver is the secret of joy. And when the end of all things comes, when the great story reaches its final chapter, we shall not find that our loves were wasted. The sighs of the mother over her child, the laughter of comrades by the fire, the tears of lovers parted and reunited, these, too, shall be caught up into the everlasting love. God does not mock us with earthly loves only to snatch them away. Rather, He prepares us by them, that we might be ready for the greater embrace. The river will reach the sea, the song will swell into a symphony, and every pure love will be fulfilled, not abolished. Therefore, let us not fear to love. Yes, to love is to risk pain, for every love makes us vulnerable. But to refuse love is to harden the heart until it cannot feel at all. Better the heart that is broken and mended by grace than the heart that never dared to give. For in the end, it is love alone that will remain. Faith will become sight. Hope will be fulfilled. But love will endure forever, for love is the very substance of God. So let us practice love now, haltingly, imperfectly, but sincerely. Let us learn in affection, rejoice in friendship, burn in Eros, and be transfigured in charity. For in so doing, we are already rehearsing the music of heaven. And if these reflections have stirred your spirit, I ask you, humbly, as one pilgrim to another, do not let them end here. Carry them further. Share them with others. Add your own reflections in the comments. Join this fellowship of thought and faith. And if you wish to journey still deeper together, then I invite you to like, to share, and to subscribe. For love is not solitary, but communal. It grows as it is given away. May we, then, walk together in the light of the love that never ends.